Hello there, welcome to Bryan Lomax Movie Talk and my review for the 2004 film Hellboy, directed by Guillermo del Toro, starring Ron Perlman, Selma Blair, John Hurt and Rupert Evans. Story follows Evans' character John Myers. We kind of see it through his eyes really. He is our window into this world. He's an FBI agent who's just been assigned to Hellboy to basically be his keeper, to look after him, to go with him on missions and things like that. Having this character, seeing all this stuff for the first time, allows us to see it for the first time. As he comes into Hellboy's world, it's at that point that a new villain on the scene, or an old villain that has kind of reared his ugly head once more, Rasputin, comes back to basically end the world. He knows the true purpose of Hellboy. He knows that Hellboy's hand, his big stone hand, is the key to unlocking a gateway to hell, whatever you want to call it. And that's precisely what he wants to do. He enlists the help of a few other villains, one of them being Isla Hopstein, Hopstein, I can't pronounce that name. She's basically his right-hand woman. A right-hand man is, I think he's a man, Cronin. He certainly was a man at some point, but now he's some kind of strange, sand-filled, clockwork, Day of the Dead kind of, zombie man is the best way I can describe him. He's also a real kick-ass villain. And finally we've got Samael, which is a demon that kind of, when it dies, it resurrects as two more. So yeah, don't kill him if you don't want a legion of them taking over your city. Fighting for Hellboy's team, we get Abe Sapien, the fishman that Del Toro would kind of go on to revisit in The Shape of Water. Obviously not the same fishman, but clearly a common thread throughout his work. And we also get Liz Sherman, who is the fire starter. Basically she can set fire to things, she can start fire just using her hands, and she's also the love of Hellboy's life. So quite a collection of characters, it must be said, and that's really where the strength of the film lies, primarily. That and the visuals. Obviously, this being Del Toro, there is a strong visual sense here. He's got a very kind of keen eye for what works, visually speaking. And this is something of a gothic horror slash action slash comedy at times, but yeah, there's a whole lot of stuff going into the mix here. But Del Toro is clearly very much inspired by a lot of the old kind of Universal horror films, things like that. He brings that kind of aesthetic to this film, as he does with a lot of his work. Ron Perlman, I think, is probably perfect casting for Hellboy, but I will say I don't warm to his character as much as I would like to in this film, in this one. May change when we get to Hellboy 2, but particularly in this one, for whatever reason, and I think it's mostly down to the writing, to be perfectly honest. I don't think this is one of Del Toro's strongest scripts. I think the dialogue at times leaves much to be desired. There's a lot of humour that kind of falls flat. Like, I can see that it's trying to be humorous, it's trying to be funny, but it doesn't always work for me. It feels a little bit cold at times, a little bit calculated. But that being said, I still like Perlman in the role. I still think he's a good fit. He looks perfect under that makeup, definitely. And Selma Blair, I kind of like, but she's a little bit emo in this, to put it mildly. In fact, the whole of the heroes in this, to be honest, feel quite emo. There's like the main storyline between Hellboy and Liz Sherman. It feels a little bit weak because it's this love story. It's kind of this romance thing. This, Hellboy wants to get together. He's a bit nervous around her, and it feels a bit flimsy, really, given who these characters are, given the weight that is upon their shoulders, given their backstories, their histories. It often feels a bit flimsy that we're focusing in on this romance element, and then when you throw Evans's character into that, you know, a guy that we know is never really going to stand a chance with this girl. He's never really going to come between them. His character just kind of feels like a bit of an afterthought. Like I say, he's our window into this world, but I don't really feel like we needed him. And kind of throwing him into this group as almost like a third wheel in this love triangle, it doesn't really do the character justice, and it doesn't really do the story justice either. I think they could have excised his character altogether and just made that unit a bit stronger by focusing on them more. Of the heroes, it is Abe Sapien that I think I warm to most. He, you know, bizarrely, seemingly has the least human features out of the hero characters, and yet there's something about him that is more human than any of them. You know, he's got the heart, he's got the insight. So yeah, I feel for this guy, and there are times when he gets in trouble, a particular scene in which he's kind of cornered by Samael, and I fear for him and I feel for him and I want him to get out. So yeah, he's probably the character on the hero side that I most root for, and would have liked to have seen more of, if I'm being perfectly honest. We also get John Hurt as Broom, who is basically Hellboy's surrogate father. He's the one who found him during an operation in the Second World War to stop a Nazi plan, to stop Rasputin first time around. And I like John Hurt. I've always liked John Hurt. He's one of those actors that, you know, you just, yeah, stick him in something, he's going to do well. He's going to bring something. Yeah, it's a shame that they kind of kill him off within this film. You'd have thought that maybe, I don't know, maybe save that for a second film, maybe even a third. But yeah, they go straight for it here. That being said, it is quite a powerful moment. It does have impact. It's probably one of the most impactful moments in the film, and it's done by this villain Cronin, who, as I said, is a really kick-ass villain. He's not a talker. He never gets any lines of dialogue, but he's someone who just looks badass, is badass. You know, he has these two blades and he knows how to use them. And there's something really scary about the guy because he won't die and because he's made of sand. And it's just, yeah, it's a real kind of Del Toro masterpiece, I think. You know, he's really into his clockwork stuff, mechanics, that kind of thing. And this guy is no different. He works on some kind of clockwork thing. Then Samael, of course, who is this demon creature who is an absolute work of art, it must be said. There are times when they use fully CG version of Samael, but for the most part it's practical effects. And oh man, I love practical effects monsters in movies. I feel like because this was a fairly low budget film for what it is, you know, this kind of movie, a comic book superhero movie, it was actually pretty low budget. And I think that forced them to use practical. And I wish they'd do that more often. You know, like more often than not, they go CGI with these kind of things. And it's just, there's like a weightlessness to it that, yeah, it's just don't have the same impact as that kind of physical thing that you can see. And whenever we get Samael in all his physical, practical effects glory, it just adds something. Seeing him scrap with Hellboy, going, yeah, just kind of tearing across the city, ending up in several different locations, this long fight that just kind of spreads out all over the place. It's highly entertaining. It's one of the standout bits of the film, one of the standout sections of the film, I say. It's actually kind of in two sections. They fight and then there's the whole break and then they go back at it again. But yeah, I love all that stuff. The weakest of the villains is probably Rasputin himself. Now he's the main villain here. He's the head honcho, so to speak. But he is pretty much just a world dominator. He's, you know, he's stereotypical, I want to end the world just because I'm bad. And yeah, all right, fair enough. They probably could have done something a bit more in this, maybe give him some kind of motivation as to why he is the way he is. But it's not a big kind of slant on the film, you know. It's it's a character you have to have in a film like this, and with so many other characters to juggle, I can understand why he might be a bit shortchanged. And I think Del Toro, clearly having a love for this material, has focused on the more obviously monstrous characters, you know, Cronin and Samael. And I'm glad he did, because I really like those characters. I just feel like as a result, Rasputin does suffer a bit. And I also feel like there are times when, like, we see that this guy's clearly got powers, like mega powers. You know, he's able to bring people back from the dead and things like that, and he's able to just appear in rooms from nowhere, even though he wasn't there just moments ago. And you kind of do find yourself kind of wondering, why does this guy even need underlings if he's this powerful? I do feel like the story is a little bit all over the place. It's not very focused. Like I say, I think it's that just trying to put too much in there, too many characters. Like, there's some characters, like one FBI guy, the guy who was kind of looking after Hellboy before Myers came on the scene. He has a death scene, and I think it's supposed to be emotional, but it's not. I don't really feel it, because we've not really had a right lot of chance to get to know this guy. You know, he's not made a big impact, a big impression on us. And he always felt like a superfluous character from the moment he kind of stepped in, especially given the fact that Myers has come in to replace him anyway. This is a film really about not judging people, not judging them on how they look. You know, we've got these heroes who right off the bat look like a collection of freaks, an assortment of freaks, but they're, you know, they're heroes. They're people who defend men and women and children, and you know, have hearts of gold and things like that. And then, like, even the main villain, you know, he looks human for all intents and purposes. He is, but underneath he's got this weird squid thing bubbling away, just waiting to come out. So yeah, it is that thing that, you know, not everything is as it appears, not everyone is what they seem, and actually heroes can be found in the most unlikely of places. So I like that the film deals with that. Just going back to Rasputin, actually, on the whole squid thing, wasn't that keen, must be said. I'd rather they just kept him as this human element. You know, he's got his demon slave, he's got his Cronin dude working for him. I felt like the squid monster at the end that he turns into, a little bit tacked on. Didn't kind of need it, just complicated things. And it wasn't a particularly great special effect, to be honest. I've never been a big fan of that type of monster in films, you know, where there's no real identity to it. It's just a load of squid arms flailing around, and it doesn't excite me. You know, as far as monsters go, Samael excites me. Squid monster, not so much. There are times as well when some scenes don't work for me. Like, there's one particular scene when Hellboy is on this bridge with this other character, and this big pendulum kind of starts swinging and starts knocking out the bridge, and then down at the end of the bridge the door starts coming down, and like, you see this door coming down pretty fast, and Hellboy grabs the other dude, he throws him across the floor, the dude slides under. At this point the door's halfway down, and then the pendulum starts coming back again, and Hellboy's jumping over stuff, he falls, he grabs on, he's coming up, and then he manages to get through the door, and you're just kind of sat there looking at it thinking, really? There's no way, there's no chance in hell. And like, you literally see the door like halfway down, and then you see Hellboy doing something, and then we cut back, and then the door's back up there, and it's those kind of continuity things that really annoy me, because that scene is designed to build tension. Oh, will he get through the door, won't he? But it's like, well, the door keeps going back up, so clearly he's going to, you know. Why not have the door closed, then have him find another way of getting out? I don't know, but I'll just have the door go slower. It's just, yeah, it's little things like that that are a bit of a niggle for me from a production standpoint, production design, whatever you want to call it. Yeah. Now, I have been fairly negative on this because I do think it is a pretty flawed film. This is one of those films that I want to love more than I actually do love, and I still like it. I still come back to it quite a lot. You know, I've seen this film quite a few times, and I do go back to it. There is something about it. It's the visuals, it's the characters, particularly the way the characters look. I just find them quite fascinating. Particularly, as I say, Abe Sapien, Cronin, and Samael are a really big draw for me. It's just that there's so many other characters. Myers, this guy who's like higher up, the guy I was talking about who gets thrown through the door, and then yeah, like the main villain, that for me just feel a bit, yeah, whatever. It kind of drags the film down a bit. That being said, like I say, I do like it. I do like it a lot. Despite its flaws, I keep coming back to it. I am entertained by it. And I think the good stuff outweighs the negative. So for that, I will give it a 3.5 out of 5. But what about you? What do you think of Del Toro's first Hellboy film? Please leave your comments down below. Let me know your thoughts. And until next time, cracking.